Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. For those that are new to my YouTube channel, subscribe immediately to see more content, and also leave a comment down below to suggest more amazing kinds of videos. Bring in part 8 of What If Spider-Man MCU entered Damnchi. Link down in description of the fan fiction This What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 15. Soaring Hearts. Peter knew he couldn't engage in a direct confrontation with Alan. He recalled Bells telling him about the top familias of Orario, Freya, Loki, and Ganesha. Facing the vice captain of the Freya familia was a risk he couldn't afford. Raising his voice, he called for the waitress. She approached, trembling slightly under Alan's piercing gaze. Why yes, sir," she stammered. Peter handed her a handful of coins. "Could we have our food packed to go, please? The ambience here has suddenly made us change our minds about dining in." The waitress, still shaky, nodded. Sure, sir," she said, taking the coins. Alan sneered. "What's that supposed to mean?" Peter kept his composure. Up until a few minutes ago, this place had the perfect environment for a date. But now, the mood has taken a nosedive. Even the musicians have stopped playing. He glanced pointedly at the small stage, prompting the musicians to blush and hastily pick up their instruments again. Alan sneered. "Why are you beating around the bush? If you have something to say to me, say it directly, weakling." Peter shrugged casually. "Geez, why are you taking it personally? I'm sure the change in ambience has nothing to do with you. Everyone here must be absolutely enjoying your presence." A snort of laughter came from a few tables away, drawing Alan's glare. The man who had snorted quickly looked away, pretending to be deeply engrossed in his drink. The air crackled with tension as Alan's sneer deepened. "Seems like we have a comedian here," he taunted. Peter, ever the resourceful one, decided to play to the audience. He cupped his hands around his mouth, mimicking a town crier. "Attention, patrons of the hero's heaven. Witness the thrilling display of a lovelorn tomcat attempting to assert dominance." The tavern erupted in laughter. Even some of the burly Freya familia members chuckled, the tension momentarily replaced by amusement. Tiona, who'd been unusually quiet, let out a surprised snort, then a full-blown laugh that echoed through the room. Alan, however, looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. His face contorted in a mixture of fury and embarrassment. Alan's fist crashed down on the table, splitting it in two with a resounding crack that echoed through the tavern. Even his own familia members flinched at the sudden outburst. The room fell into an eerie silence, the display of raw aggression gripping the tavern like a vice. "You find this amusing, do you, Pipsqueak?" he growled, his voice strained with barely contained fury. "I'll snap you like a twig." Tiona suddenly appeared in a blur, standing protectively in front of Peter. Her emerald eyes glinted with a dangerous light. "You want a fight, pretty boy?" she challenged, her voice a low growl. Peter tried to defuse the situation diplomatically. Now, let's not get carried away, Mr. Allen. Is this any way for the vice captain of one of Orario's most esteemed familias to behave?" Alan scoffed. "Esteemed? We're not merely esteemed, Pipsqueak. We're the top dogs. Freya familia is the richest and the most powerful familia in Orario." Peter replied, "Being the most powerful doesn't mean being the best. With great power must also come great responsibility. Look at the Ganesha familia, for example. They are the official lawkeepers of Orario, constantly serving and protecting the city." Alan sneered. "The Ganesha familia is nothing but a bunch of weaklings. They are the guild's lapdogs." A man sitting a few tables away suddenly shouted, "How dare you call us weaklings? Ganesha is the god of the masses. His familia serves the city because he loves the people." The group at his table, clearly adventurers, glared collectively at Alan. They were likely members of the Ganesha familia, given their fierce loyalty, though they lacked the distinctive elephant masks and uniforms. Alan glared at the adventurer, his expression a mixture of anger and calculation. The Freya familia members exchanged nervous glances, clearly uneasy at the prospect of a confrontation with the Ganesha familia. Sensing the shift, Tiona cut in, her voice ringing with defiance. "The Loki familia consistently undertakes quests from the guild for the betterment of Orario, and we stand ready to aid the Ganesha familia whenever called upon. What, may I ask, does the Freya familia contribute to Orario?" Her words resonated with the crowd, murmurs of agreement rippling through the tavern. Alan's sneer faltered slightly as he searched for a response. "We aided in the conflict with Evelys," he retorted, his tone defensive. And we've fought for Orario in wars against Rakia. The adventurer of the Ganesha Familia countered swiftly, your assistance against Evolus came only when pressured by the guild, and your involvement in the wars with Rakia was mandated by the Donatus. You fight not out of duty or honor, but obligation. The tavern erupted with louder murmurs of agreement, echoing the sentiments of the Ganesha Familia member. Alan's face flushed crimson, the jeers of the crowd a stark contrast to the amusement he had sought just moments ago. He glared at Tiona, then at the Ganesha Familia members, his bravado crumbling under the weight of their combined challenge. His mission had been simple: spread rumors about a level 1 adventurer from the Hestia Familia defeating the level 5 Crusher. Truth be told, he hated being part of Freya's games. He had come along mainly to enjoy free booze and food from the Familia coffers and let his underlings handle the rumor spreading. Running into Tiona herself, along with the level 1 adventurer, was totally unexpected. Unable to resist the urge to taunt them, his jealousy simmered. How had this level 1 adventurer managed to catch his goddess's attention? He always enjoyed putting people down, but this human had turned the tables on him, making him a laughingstock. His goddess certainly wouldn't appreciate him engaging in direct confrontation with someone who had caught her interest. And she would be even less pleased if he got into any sort of altercation with the Loki or Ganesha Familia. He had bitten off more than he could chew. Alan's anger turned inward, and he forced himself to take a step back. He had to salvage what he could. You all think you're so clever, he muttered to Peter and Tiona, his voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. But this isn't over. He slammed a pouch of coins on the broken table, a meager compensation for the damage, and stormed out of the tavern, his entourage trailing behind him. The patrons erupted in cheers and jeers, the tension dissipating as quickly as it had risen. Tiona let out a satisfied snort, while Peter wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, relieved the situation hadn't escalated further. Well, he said with a chuckle, glancing at the splintered remains of the table. So much for a peaceful date. The musicians cautiously resumed their playing, and the tavern's atmosphere gradually returned to its lively, bustling self. Tiona smirked. Seems you handled the situation rather well. Perhaps a bit too well for a certain vice captain's ego. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed from a nearby table. Well said, lass, that puffed-up peacock needed to be taken down a peg. A well-built man with brown hair grinned at them, raising his tankard in a toast. Peter recognized him as the member of the Ganesha Familia who had spoken out earlier. He returned the toast with a grateful smile. Thanks for the assist back there, Peter said. Things could have gotten messy. The Ganesha Familia member chuckled. Always happy to help those who stand up for what's right, lad. Besides, a little humiliation never hurt anyone, especially someone like Alan. He approached their table and extended his hand to Peter. You've got guts, kid, I'll give you that. I'm Hashana Dorlia. Peter shook his hand. Peter Parker. Hashana gripped his hand firmly, and Peter matched his grip. With a smile, Hashana said, you are incredibly strong for a level 1 kid. At that moment, the waitress arrived with their packed food. Peter glanced around. They had become the center of attention of the entire tavern. Best to take their date elsewhere. He and Tiona stood to leave. Come by the, I am Ganesha, manner sometime, Hashana boomed, slapping Peter on the back. We'll have a proper welcome for the hero who puts arrogant tomcats in their place. Peter chuckled, accepting the invitation with a nod, though he wondered about the strange name of the manor. As he and Tiona stepped out into the cool night air, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He had faced a tense situation with wit and diplomacy, and even gained an unlikely ally in the process. Tiona walked beside him, her fiery persona replaced by a rare softness. You handled that like a champ, Peter, she admitted. Most guys would have crumbled under that pressure. I swear, I almost decked that puffed-up cad myself. Ruining our date like that, she trailed off, a grimace twisting her features. Peter flashed a playful grin. Remember how I said our destination was a surprise? He paused for effect, watching curiosity bloom in Tiona's eyes. Well, the hero's heaven wasn't the only surprise I had planned. Tiona's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Oh, and what might that be? Peter winked as he helped her into the carriage. You'll see. Peter dismissed the taxi a few blocks away from the Tower of Babel, slipping the driver a generous tip. Tiona, brimming with curiosity, couldn't contain herself any longer. All right, spill it, Peter. What's the surprise? Peter winked, a playful glint in his eye. Patience, Tiona, you'll just have to wait and see. With a playful nudge, he directed her to wait near a building. He ducked into an alley, swiftly shedding his fancy clothes to reveal his integrated suit underneath. He whispered to Jane, "Remember the plan." Jane's response crackled through the suit's speakers with a hint of attitude, "I'm a quantum computer, how could I possibly forget?" Peter chuckled as the nanorobots of the suit seemingly liquefied, spreading across its surface and transforming its color to sleek black. He webbed up his fancy clothes into a tiny bundle, carrying it with him. As he approached Tiona, she eyed his sleek, black suit and said, "Whoa, what kind of outfit is that?" Then, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, she added, "It's kind of kinky, though. Is the grand surprise that you're going to strip for me?" "Only if you insist," Peter replied, causing Tiona to blush. He placed his webbed bundle into the basket of food that Tiona was carrying. With a flick of his wrist he spun his webs around the basket, transforming it into a makeshift backpack. "Here, wear this," he instructed, offering the transformed basket with a roguish grin. Tiona eyed him with a playful suspicion as she took the backpack. The transformation was impressive, but it didn't quite quell the question swirling in her mind. "Exactly what mischief are you planning?" she challenged, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Peter chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "Patience, my love," he teased, "now hop onto my back and hold on tight." "Huh?" Tiona asked, puzzled. "Just trust me," Peter insisted. Tiona complied, hopping onto his back, her legs locking securely around his waist. Peter used his magical webs to weave a harness which he used to secure Tiona comfortably to his back to ensure a smooth ride for her. With a powerful push from his legs, he launched them onto a nearby rooftop. Peter moved with practiced ease, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, the wind whipping through Tiona's hair. She pouted playfully, "You know I can handle myself on rooftops. Why are you carrying me?" Peter skidded to a stop near the expansive plaza surrounding the Tower of Babel. With a mischievous smile, he replied, "For this." He shot 2 web lines to the roofs of adjacent buildings and began stepping back, stretching the webs taut. Tiona's playful defiance morphed into a hint of nervous excitement. Peter," she began, her voice tight, "what are you doing?" Peter grinned. "You're not afraid of heights, are you?" Tiona scoffed. "Amazon warriors fear nothing," she declared, puffing out her chest. "Good," Peter said cheerfully. "Here we go." With a twang, they were launched across the plaza like a cannonball. Tiona screamed near his ear, "What the hell?" Peter just chuckled loudly. They soared through the air, veering slightly off to the right of the tower. As they passed it, Peter flicked his wrist and deployed a web line to the tower, causing their momentum to jerk as they began revolving around it. He continued firing more web lines, pulling them higher and higher with each revolution. To Peter, the best part of being Spider-Man was web swinging. The sheer speed, the acceleration, the freedom, the rush, it never failed to cheer him up when he was in a bad mood or had too much on his mind. Even though he had only been in Orario for 3 days, he already missed web swinging. This was the first time he was swinging with his magical webs, and he felt so much more control over them. He had to control his web shooters with hand gestures, whereas his magical webs followed his every thought, lengthening or contracting according to his will. He was accelerating faster than he ever could with his synthetic webs. Furthermore, he always wore his mask in New York, but here the wind was whipping his face and blowing through his hair. "Woohoo!" he shouted with a raw grin. A moment later, Tiona echoed his excitement. "Woohoo! This is incredible," she shouted, her voice exhilarated. "I can't believe I'm actually flying." Peter's grin widened. Tiona's delight mirrored his own. It seemed she enjoyed web swinging just as much as MJ did. With a flick of his wrist, he deployed another web line, attaching it to the side of the Tower of Babel. Their momentum shifted, sending them into a thrilling loop around the colossal structure. The world became a dizzying blur of sky and stone as Peter wove a web symphony, pulling them higher with each revolution. This was the freedom he craved, the raw exhilaration that only web swinging could provide. Finally, they soared above the level of the clouds, the city shrinking beneath them. With a final pull, Peter landed them gently on the rooftop of the colossal tower. Tiona's eyes widened in wonder as she took in the breathtaking view of the city, her excitement palpable. She pulled Peter around excitedly, pointing out various landmarks of the city with a childlike glee. "Everything looks so tiny from up here," she exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. Throwing her arms wide, she shouted with exhilaration, "I am on top of the world." Peter couldn't help but laugh at her infectious enthusiasm, feeling a sense of joy wash over him. They settled onto the parapet, the city sprawling beneath them like a jeweled tapestry. A light drizzle kissed the air, a cool contrast to the warmth radiating from Tiona as she leaned against him. Music would be nice, Peter murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Jane automatically started playing a predetermined playlist. As the melody filled the air with haunting beauty, Tiona, who had been resting her head on his shoulder, suddenly jerked up. "What is that? Where is the music coming from?" she asked, her eyes widened with surprise. "I've never heard music like this before." Peter opened his mouth to speak, but Tiona silenced him with a single finger pressed to his lips. Her eyes, usually filled with fiery spirit, held a flicker of sadness. "Don't answer that," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Please, don't tell me your secrets." Peter's heart hammered in his chest. This wasn't the reaction he expected. "What are you talking about?" he managed, his voice strained. Tiona sighed, the sound heavy in the quiet night. "My captain and my goddess," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "they ordered me to learn your secrets." A knot formed in Peter's stomach. He watched as a single tear rolled down Tiona's cheek, tracing a glistening path through the moonlight. "If you tell me," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "I won't be able to hide them from my goddess. So please, don't tell me. I don't want to know." Peter locked eyes with her, his gaze a silent storm of emotions. He saw the war raging within her, loyalty to her familia battling the newfound depth of her feelings for him. Without a word, he reached out, his thumb gently brushing away the tear. In that tender gesture, a silent understanding passed between them. He leaned in, closing the distance between their lips. The kiss that followed was a searing expression of everything left unsaid, a desperate plea for solace, a fierce declaration of defiance, and a love blossoming amidst impossible circumstances. The melody in the background swelled, a poignant counterpoint to the raw emotion surging between them. As they embraced, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in that moment. With Freya, sometime earlier. Freya reclined in her throne-like chair, a glass of wine in hand. She gazed at the new magic mirror, a replacement for the one she had shattered in a fit of rage and jealousy that morning. Horn had been dispatched to pose as Sur at the hostess of fertility. With both Belle and Peter captivating her attention, she had little time for her usual diversions under the guise of a waitress. Freya was watching as Peter and Tiona went to the tavern Hero's Heaven for their date. A tiny twinge of jealousy toward Tiona flickered within her, but it was fleeting. She understood the transient nature of mortal love. Gods could love the soul, tracking mortals through their afterlife and reincarnations. Only gods were capable of eternal love. This was the root of her jealousy toward Hestia. Freya narrowed her eyes as Alan, her troublesome vice-captain, entered the tavern with his usual bluster. She frowned as Alan confronted Peter and Tiona directly. The mirror didn't convey sound, but Freya saw Peter somehow incite the entire tavern to laugh at Alan. She was impressed. Most of the adventurers and common folk in the city feared Alan. To get them to laugh at him was astounding. Alan's reaction, breaking the table in anger, only worsened the situation. Tiona suddenly stood defensively in front of Peter. Whatever Peter said next caused other adventurers, whom Freya recognized as members of the Ganesha familia, to join the argument against Alan. Freya's gripped her wine glass tightly in anger. How had Alan managed to turn a simple mission to spread rumors into a confrontation with both the Loki and Ganesha familias? Thankfully, Alan, realizing his blunder, retreated. Still, the damage was done. The news would spread across Orario like wildfire that her vice-captain had been made a laughingstock by a mere level 1. Alan was powerful, even surpassing Ottar in speed, but his arrogance often overshadowed his skills. Freya sighed, wondering not for the first time if she should demote Alan from his position as vice-captain. She continued watching the love birds and was amused when Peter ducked into an alley and stripped to reveal his red and gold armor beneath his clothes. Her eyes widened in surprise as the golden strands from his armor seemed to liquefy and spread, transforming into a black, skin-tight suit. She raised her eyebrow at the strange magic. Her curiosity piqued, she watched as Peter carried Tiona on his back and began leaping over rooftops. She gasped when he appeared to start flying, swinging with his strange webs at incredible speed, heading towards the top of the Tower of Babel, towards her abode, the magic mirror struggling to keep pace with their jerky movements. Freya was beginning to wonder just how much Peter would continue to amaze her. For a brief moment, she caught a glimpse of Peter and Tiona physically as they zoomed past her windows before they landed on the rooftop. They even had the audacity to sit directly above her room. Suddenly a sound, faint at first but undeniable, snaked through the night air. Music. Freya's head snapped up, mirroring the surprise that flickered across Tiona's reflection in the magic mirror. Freya rose from her throne, drawn to the window like a moth to a flame. Pressing her ear against the cool glass, she strained to hear. The music, unlike anything she'd ever encountered in her millennia of existence, filled the night air. She couldn't identify the musical instruments, and the singer's voice, though imperfect by godly standards, resonated with a power that intertwined with the music, creating a captivating harmony. Where did this music come from? What magic did Peter possess to create such an enchanting soundscape? A shiver ran down Freya's spine, a mix of curiosity and possessiveness. This man, this mortal, seemed to hold an endless well of surprises. He was defying her expectations at every turn. Was he her destined ODR? Freya stole another glance at the mirror. Peter and Tiona, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, were locked in a kiss. A pang of jealousy rose within her, even against this mortal woman. She wished she were up there instead of Tiona. She returned to her throne, a sigh escaping her lips, heavy with a strange mix of longing and disdain. They unpacked their food basket and had an impromptu picnic sitting on the parapet of her roof, smiling and enjoying their meal. A smile played on Tiona's lips as they shared the simple meal, their laughter carried faintly on the night wind. Freya, a goddess who had experienced countless dates, grand displays of affection with gods and fleeting encounters with mortals. Candlelit dinners with orchestras serenading, elaborate feasts fit for divinity, all paled in comparison to the scene before her. This simple act of sharing takeaway food, bathed in moonlight, with the otherworldly melody playing in the background, held a raw intimacy that had been missing in all her grand dates. The sheer simplicity of their interaction, the unpretentious joy they found in each other's company, stirred something within her. It was a stark contrast to the superficial grandeur she was accustomed to. Freya's jealousy deepened, tinged with an unfulfilled yearning for the kind of genuine connection Peter and Tiona seemed to share. She felt a strong urge to rush up to the roof and tell them to get the fuck out, feeling indignant that they were trespassing on her domain. Yet, logic intervened. Alan had already tarnished the reputation of her familia tonight. She didn't want to compound the mistake by interrupting Peter's date a second time. She would just alienate him by doing so. And she didn't want to sully his soul by using her charm. No, brute force wouldn't do. She needed a more subtle approach. A small, sly smile played on Freya's lips. Patience had always been one of her strongest suits. She would bide her time, learn more about Peter's magic and abilities. An idea, as yet unformed, flickered in the back of her mind. A way to not only gain Peter's trust, but also deal with a lingering problem that had plagued her familia for far too long. Yes, a more subtle approach was needed, but with a touch of cunning, she just might find the perfect way to kill two birds with one stone. Peter and Tiona finished their meal on the roof, overlooking all of Orario. Peter had thoroughly enjoyed the evening. Since he couldn't reveal any of his otherworldly secrets, he made Tiona laugh with anecdotes about Belle's loose lips and his overbearing dungeon advisor. Tiona, in turn, shared tales of Loki's perverted nature and her possessiveness over the girls in the familia. She described how the girls had banded together to help her prepare for the date, causing Peter to laugh at some of their outrageous advices that Tiona recounted. Tiona turned to Peter, her eyes sparkling. "Peter, you've exceeded all my expectations with tonight's date. It's beyond anything from the storybooks. Allow me to return the favor. Have you ever been to the Under Resort?" Peter looked puzzled. "Under Resort, what's that?" "It's on the 18th floor of the dungeon," Tiona explained. "How come you haven't been there yet? You're so strong, you could easily make it deeper than that." Peter smiled sheepishly. "I've only been an adventurer for 3 days. I've only ventured into the dungeon twice and reached the 7th floor so far." Tiona's eyes widened in surprise. 3 days? How are you already this strong?" She paused, her expression shifting to one of resignation. "Wait, never mind, no need to answer that," she added with a sigh. Then, a mischievous glint sparked in her gaze. "Tell you what, how about I take you to the Under Resort tomorrow? Consider it my treat." Peter hesitated slightly. "Belle and I actually have plans to go shopping tomorrow." "Ah, of course," Tiona replied, understanding flickering across her face. "Well, how about the day after? I probably need to run some errands tomorrow anyway." Peter grinned. Day after sounds perfect. Thanks, Tiona, this means a lot. They discussed the details of their plans, excitement bubbling between them. As the conversation waned, Peter had an idea to end their date perfectly. He stood up on the parapet and whispered, "Web wings." Jane deployed them instantly, and he spread his arms out. Tiona gasped at the wing-like material extending under his arms. With a surge of surprise mixing with a thrill of anticipation, she asked, "What are you doing, Peter?" Her voice laced with curiosity. Peter's smirk spoke volumes. "Just trust me," he replied, his confidence palpable. With his mastery over his magical webs, he expanded the wingspan of his suit, extending the web-like constructs from his wrists to his ankles and even creating a webbed membrane between his feet. The transformation was remarkable. The once sleek black suit now resembled a magnificent set of expansive wings. "Tiona," he said, extending a hand, "hop on again." Tiona hesitated for a moment, a mix of nervousness and excitement sparkling in her eyes. "You wouldn't, you're not actually going to," she stammered, her voice trailing off. Peter's laugh cut her off, a rich, warm sound that echoed in the stillness of the night. Reassured, Tiona climbed onto his back, her heart pounding in her chest. He took a deep breath, then with a confident leap, launched them both off the edge of the rooftop. A shriek of pure, unadulterated joy erupted from Tiona's lips as they plummeted for a breathless moment. Peter, arms and legs outstretched, caught the air currents, guiding their descent with practiced ease. The wind whipped through their hair, carrying Tiona's elated shouts to his ears. A wide grin stretched across Peter's face, the thrill of flight and the joy etched on Tiona's face combining into a moment of pure magic. Yet, beneath the exhilaration, a low hum of unease thrummed in Peter's gut. The feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation that had started subtly earlier that day when he picked up Tiona at the Twilland Manor, intensified now. It was a predatory gaze, unwavering and cold. Unaware of the unseen gaze upon them, Peter and Tiona reveled in the exhilarating flight. Below, the sprawling cityscape of Orario twinkled like a scattered constellation. Yet, a sliver of unease gnawed at Peter's enjoyment. He couldn't shake the feeling of being a target. Meanwhile, within the opulent confines of her tower, Freya had abandoned the magic mirror. Her icy glare pierced the night, locking onto the two figures silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Jealousy, a venomous serpent, coiled around her heart. With a flick of her wrist, another wine glass met an unfortunate end, shattering against the window, thankfully sparing the expensive mirror this time. Her eyes narrowed, following the flying figures until they became a faint speck in the distance. A spark of determination flickered in their depths. Tonight's encounter had solidified her resolve. She would have Peter by any means necessary. Chapter 16. Interlude, We Want Romance. Tiona couldn't wipe the smile off her face, replaying the key moments of their date in her mind. Sometimes, she simply basked in the feeling that everything in her life was finally perfect. However, relaxation soon gave way to fatigue. Knowing her room was just a short distance away, she eagerly anticipated some well-deserved rest. She looked forward to removing all that makeup and jewelry and changing into something more comfortable. Luckily, Peter shared her view on casual dates. For their next outing to the underresort, she could dress just like any other normal day, no more elaborate preparations, thousands of useless tips, or similar fuss. Tiona knew her familia members meant well, but the preparation had been more exhausting than the actual date. Her happy smile turned into an awkward one as she recalled the army of girls who had held her hostage, transforming her into a fashion mannequin while bombarding her with a chaotic storm of advice. Thank goodness that was behind her. Or so she thought as she opened her door, only to be met with a similar scene, a gaggle of girls scattered throughout her room as if they owned the place. "What the hell are you all doing in my room?" was the question that formed in her mind for a split second. But the answer was obvious, so she didn't bother saying it out loud. She tried to turn and slip away, too tired to face an interrogation. But suddenly, Anakiti was in her face with a ravenous expression. Since when did Anakiti become so fast? She wondered silently as more and more hands held her back, ushering her into the room and closing the door behind her. "We want to know everything. Did you kiss? Did he take you out to dinner?" "Of course he did. Why else would he rent a taxi? Where did you go? Was it fancy? Tell us." A sea of questions, assumptions, and incoherent screams of excitement filled the room. Nearly all the women in the familia were there. Even Ice, who was known for having zero interest in these matters. Although considering that Lefia was sitting next to her, she was probably responsible for dragging her into this. But even more surprising was that Tion was also in the group. Leaning against the wall, with a forced smile. A confused expression that was difficult to read, but it was probably a mixture of discomfort, jealousy, but also genuine interest in knowing her sister's situation. Bomb asterisk bomb asterisk bomb. Loud knocks on the door silenced the room. Anakiti opened the door. It was Arx, one of the warriors from Raoul's group. Usually clad in armor appropriate for his role as the tank, he was currently wearing pajamas. Hey, keep it down. Some of us are trying to sleep, and it's late. What are you talking about? Your room is in another tower. Arx pointed through the window. His room was just in a straight line from there. Yes, sound travels. Tion said, playing it off. Since she and Tiona fought frequently, it wasn't the first time Arx complained. You are an adventurer. Are you telling us that you can sleep in the dungeon and not here? You are louder than a wave of monsters. It's been more than 2 hours, damn it. Tiona just arrived, it'll only be a few minutes more, okay. And what's all the fuss about a date? You only need to know one thing. Hey, Tiona. Was there any action? Arx asked, waggling his eyebrows suggestively. Action? What do you mean? The warrior made an O shape with his index finger and thumb of his left hand, while he ran his index finger from his other hand through the gap between the other fingers, in a clear and quite explicit obscene gesture. What kind of woman do you think I am? Do you really think I'd do that on the first date? Shouted the indignant Amazon. Then the rest can wait until tomorrow. Boo. A general chorus of boos from the group of girls drowned out the young man's response as several objects flew toward him. He didn't bother to move out of the way. Despite some of them being metallic, including a few knives capable of causing serious injuries to unblessed people, that gesture was like throwing pillows in a family of normal people. Males out, Lefia and Alicia shouted at the same time. And the door slammed shut behind him. Come on, tell us, what happened, how was it? Tiona sighed. She knew she'd have to spill the beans eventually, but she didn't expect it to be so soon. Yes, Peter is great. And yes, it was a fantastic date. Ooh, whistle, more, give us all the details. Once again, expressions of surprise, whistles, and the like. Was it going to be like this every time she said something? Okay, in a quick summary, we did some sightseeing in a taxi, went to a restaurant for dinner, strolled around the city together, you know, typical date stuff. This time, the group responded with less enthusiasm. That's it, Lefia said. Honestly, considering that guy, we expected something more exotic, Alicia commented. Yeah, like showing you his spider lair. Or training together. The group fell silent after the last statement, and everyone looked at the person who had said it. Of course, it was Ice. Several girls rolled their eyes. Ice's idea of a date was certainly unique. Where did you have dinner? At Hero's Heaven. Oh, I was expecting something more classic. Like Sublimating, or Princess Corner, Lefia said. The places mentioned by the elf were where proper etiquette was mandatory, and usually only high-class people or those with refined tastes, mostly elves, frequented. No, those places would be too uncomfortable for Tiona. Hero's Heaven is perfect for her. A guy who knows his girlfriend's preferences, Anakiti said, gesturing with a thumbs up. Other girls joined in, imitating the gesture. Lefia, Alicia, and other elves from the Familia didn't, but they all knew that elves tended to have more refined tastes. And what else? Well, we enjoyed part of the dinner, but then Alan showed up, and things took a turn. Alan, like Alan Frommel, Tiona nodded. Ugh, the bet of the Freya Familia, Elfie said. TST, I have nothing in common with that loathsome cat. Bet's voice echoed from the window of his room, on other tower. The group responded with a chorus of laughter. The heightened senses of first-class adventurers made the entire conversation public. There was hardly any privacy in AS class Familia. Please, tell me you didn't blow up the bar, Anakiti said, concerned about the consequences for the Familia. Tiona shook her head. Don't worry. Actually, somehow, Peter managed to turn the situation around, and in the end, Alan was humiliated. Came a chorus of uncertainty, their faces etched with disbelief. Just with words. I don't remember every detail, but every time Alan made an offensive comment, Peter responded sarcastically, and even got the crowd laughed at him. I don't recall the exact words he used, but the peak of humiliation was something like, ahem. Tiona cleared her throat, adopting a serious tone and imitating a masculine voice. Attention, everyone, witness the display of a love-struck cat trying to assert dominance. She expressed, doing her best Peter imitation. No, did he really say that? Ha 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 ha. I wish I'd been there to see it. All the voices blended into a cacophony of disbelief and merriment. What surprises me is that Alan didn't explode everything, Anakitty commented. Well, he broke a table, Tiona confirmed. And Alan tried to take Peter's words as an offense to Freya Familia. But Peter managed to steer the conversation and held up the Ganesha Familia as an example of what a good family should be, and... Let me guess, Anakitty interjected. Alan insulted the Ganesha Familia. Tiona nodded, met with a chorus of disapproving vocal sounds. Only an idiot would insult Ganesha in an adventurer's bar. An idiot, sounds like the definition of Vanna Freya, Elfie quipped. Ha 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 ha, the others laughed in unison. Well, after that, even Alan realized he'd messed up and slinked away with his tail between his legs. Woohoo, the girls cheered and applauded at the outcome. And then what? Well, now, when I tell it, it sounds funny, but I was in a bad mood because of what happened. But Peter turned things around. He had a plan to take me to a rooftop terrace with great views. That's where we finished dinner. We spent some time alone there, then went back down to the street, walked around the city a bit more together, and that's it. Big lie, the girls fell silent instantly upon hearing the voice of their goddess. But it didn't come from the door, nor was it visible in the room. They all looked in a specific direction. Tiona quickly opened her wardrobe doors. Loki, what are you doing in my closet? Spying, isn't it obvious? Most of the girls glared the goddess in disbelief. Have you been there for 2 hours? Anakitty asked surprised, with her eyes wide. 3 actually. One piece of advice if you give it a try. Don't drink at the same time. It usually doesn't end well. The group's faces showed the same expression. No one would dare to do such nonsense. But why? You could have simply joined the group, commented Anakitty. It's better. An experienced goddess's little trick. The best way to find the truth is to hear the lies. But you children have the nasty habit of not lying and telling half-truths when we are around. That's why hiding is the best. And let's not change the subject. Tiona is the main character today. You're withholding the most important part, aren't you? The girls looked alternately between the goddess and the Amazon. Tiona sighed. She knew she wouldn't be able to protect the secret for long, but she hoped she could at least keep it hidden for a few more days. I haven't lied. Well, maybe I've kept a little detail to myself, but... The rest of the companions gathered around her. Their eyes seemed to burn with curiosity, eager to hear the juiciest details of the date. Okay, it was amazing, alright, the best experience of my life. Line covered her mouth. Arx was right, no, of course not. Tiona blushed like a tomato as she realized her words might have been misinterpreted. I didn't mean that, it's about the discreet place that Peter took me to after dinner. Peter took me to the rooftop of Babel. You sneaked into Freya's attic. No, not that, although, we could have, I guess. No, on the roof. Peter did this, whoosh, whoosh, thing with his threads, Tiona gestured with her arms, and we swung through Babel until we reached the very top. Some of the girls raised their eyebrows, while others tilted their heads in confusion. Did anyone understand anything? The rest shook their heads. Alright, step by step. Peter asked me to climb onto his back, Tiona explained, briefly hopping onto Anakitty's back and then back down. And then he shot several of those spider threads to each side of the buildings, and he stretched them, like we were a giant slingshot, and we went flying through the air. What? Tiona grabbed one of her old weapons, no longer suitable for her current strength, which hung on her wall as decoration, and placed it vertically. Imagine this as Babel, so we flew like this, she pointed with her finger, and using his threads, he kept launching them while we ascended like this, she continued, moving her finger in a spiraling motion. With movements like, Tiona tried to imitate Peter's movements, including his movements in an oblique position. Since she had nothing to hold on to, she kept his left leg stretched out while with the other tried to imitate the movements. The mix seemed ridiculous and nonsensical, earning her more confused looks. Tiona sighed again, then opened her door, gripping the frame with one hand. She lifted her body, providing a better imitation of Peter. You shouldn't do that, Lefia commented as the frame creaked under the Amazon's strength. It still wasn't entirely faithful to the original, but with a little imagination, one could grasp what she meant. I have an image in my head, Elfie said, but I'm not sure if it's accurate. It was like flying at incredible speed. It was amazing. Wow, and the views were breathtaking. No one could interrupt us. We ate, talked, danced. Several of them exclaimed. Tiona's face showed discomfort. She had unintentionally revealed something she didn't want to. Something that didn't escape Loki's notice. Yes, what's wrong with dancing in the moonlight, even without music? Tiona defended herself. Loki saw through Tiona's attempted deception easily. Yes, technically she didn't lie, but the omission was too clear to miss. But there was music, right? Come on, why beat around the bush if you'll end up telling us everything? Spill it, Loki insisted. Tiona sighed in frustration. When we arrived, music started playing, almost magically. I guess he had some artifact. You guess. Didn't you ask him? No. Loki raised an eyebrow, giving her an inquisitive look. Tiona was tired. She understood her companion's excitement, but Loki's behavior was becoming excessive. It felt like an interrogation. Her annoyance grew until she couldn't contain it any longer. If she was going to spill everything, she might as well express her feelings too. I explicitly told him not to tell me. Is that what you want to know, goddess? I spilled everything. I told him that you would force me to tell you everything we did. So I told him not to share any secrets with me. Finally, seizing the opportunity, Tiona didn't miss the chance to vent some of her frustration on her sister. Tisk, how dare you, sister? The captain told you. Putting her hand over Tiona's mouth, Loki silenced her. Quiet, Tiona, now is not the time, Loki said coldly. It was unusual to see Loki abandon her usual playful behavior for a serious tone, which significantly amplified its effect. Loki began to release her divine aura. In small doses, divine aura allowed mortals to easily recognize them as gods. But when they unleashed their full potential, their voices felt like oppressive commands that could hardly be resisted. Why did you do that? You knew what we ordered. Although her aura was directed at Tiona, all the girls felt the impact of the released divine energy. Most of them averted their gaze in silence. But Tiona resisted. I don't want to deceive my boyfriend. It's not fair. Loki increased the pressure on the Amazon. Tiona wanted to scream, to rage, to cry, anything but yield, yet none of that was possible against the goddess's aura. And yet, she couldn't allow herself to be broken. Smile, always smile, she told herself. But instead of her usual smile, Tiona flashed a mischievous grin. Besides, I followed your orders. You said I wouldn't spy because he would expect me to tell you everything, right? I just ensured that it were the case. 1 second later, Loki burst in laugh, while her aura vanished. You dare to use my words against me. How mischievous. I taught you well, a worthy daughter of the goddess of mischief. If you put it that way, I can't be angry with you. Loki said, running her hand affectionately through Tiona's hair. Most of the girls sighed as the mood shifted again. What did Peter say? Elfie asked. Tiona blushed. Honestly, nothing, he just kissed me. At the romantic confession, the group erupted in hysterical cheers and applause. Since Peter doesn't mind, and what's done is done, let's leave it in the past, Loki insisted. But now that Peter is warned, that means you can spill everything. How did you describe the music? Tiona sighed, rolling her eyes. I hadn't mentioned it. It was music I'd never heard before. Oh, that sounds interesting. What would you say it resembled? Oriental music, from the East. Nothing, I'd never heard anything like it. There were multiple songs playing one after another, some with female singers, some with male, or some with both, but the melody, the instruments, everything sounded exotic. Yet it was slow and beautiful. Romantic ambiance, Lena mused to herself. Exotic music, probably from his homeland, artifacts, good work. Loki said, what else? We flew down from Babel, over Orario. Flew? Ice asked. Ice's magic allowed her to fly in short bursts, but it was very limited. Her curiosity was palpable. Do you mean the same you said before, but backwards? Elfie asked, also interested. Tiona replied, no, we flew far from the tower. Well, Peter said it's more like gliding. Gliding. The girls launched into a bizarre discussion and exposition of what Tiona was trying to explain, with limited success. Alright, got it. Peter descended while gliding after creating wings with his strange web magic. Anything else? Loki persisted. Tiona shrugged. I don't know, Peter has a black version of his armor. Does it matter? Inconsequential. How about hero stories? 4. Tiona shook her head. Has he told you anything about that spirit his companion mentioned? Tiona shook her head again. Try to remember, surely something else comes to your mind. Goddess Loki, don't you think that's enough? Anakiti said. Oh, come on, you're just as curious as I am about what happened. We're only interested in the date. But all these details, it's like, Lefia's words hung in the air, as if she didn't want to complete the sentence to avoid offending her goddess. An interrogation, Elfie finished, earning agreement from many of the girls. Honestly, asking Tiona to spy on her boyfriend, this time, line continued and left her words hanging. Sucks. Elfie chimed in again. The girls nodded once more, even more emphatically than before. If disclosing everything you do with your boyfriend were a rule, I think I'd opt not to be in a relationship, Narvi commented. We're forbidden from it in the first place, so, Elfie said, eliciting uncomfortable laughter from her companions. Hey, that's not true. Relationships are perfectly allowed, Loki protested. Among our Familia members, Alicia added. But, with those conditions, our options are quite limited. We have 2 women per man. I don't call that a good balance. Elfie pouted. That's the perfect ratio, you're just limiting yourselves, protested Loki. This room is full of people eager for romantic adventures. It's all about pairing up, I'm even open to a relationship. What do you say, Ice? No, the blonde girl replied curtly. We don't share your tastes, Loki, Elfie protested. I'd like an elf, preferably not over 50, Alicia confessed. Did you notice Peter's companion? Rakta, the rabbit-eared girl from the Familia, chimed in. He seemed nice. We all noticed his resemblance to a rabbit. No wonder you liked him, Narvi retorted. The poor girl couldn't help blushing deeply, while the rest of her companions laughed. He was cute like a rabbit. Ice suddenly spoke up with a slight blush on her normally stoic face. The entire room was silent. No one could believe that Ice Wallenstein, the girl who had turned down hundreds of courtship attempts, had said a guy was cute. Loki froze and began to sweat profusely. That's a good joke, Ice. Or you mean, cute as a toddler. That's it, isn't it? Ice ignored Loki and suddenly closed her eyes and smiled. A perfect normal cute happy face. The problem was that she was Ice Wallenstein, and that smile felt creepy on her. Bunny, Mr. Hero, she babbled. What the heck, Ice, he's just a rookie you saved. The tomato boy fled from you. He can't be a hero. Finn is a hero. You are a hero. Most people here are heroes. I can be your hero, too. But that boy is just trash that won't level up in ages. Listen to me, don't ignore me, Loki shouted with tears crossing her face. But Ice completely ignored her goddess, as she walked through her inner mind. The image of a cute rabbit brought back scant fragments of memories from her distant past, where she was still a happy girl. She remembered that she had a cute little white pet rabbit that she used as a companion and doll. Her beloved pet, Mr. Hero. While her mother told her stories of incredible heroes, she played that her own hero saved her and, of course, her little pet played that role. Miss Ice? Lefia asked worriedly. It seems she has entered into her potato snack mode, again. Tion said downplaying it. She will come back by herself in a minute. Don't worry. Miss Ice? Lefia asked again. Yes, Ice said, as her face returned to her normal state. Told you, Tion said boastfully. Are you okay? The elf asked. Why is Loki throwing a tantrum? Hestia and her cute children. It's her fault, as always. Loki protested. And why this sudden interest in men from other familias? Sudden interest. Elfie exaggerated her tone. We've been warning about this for a while. And now that we see Tiona, I get the whole familia thing, but, if I have to choose between love and my career as adventurer, I think if I reach 25 without experiencing love, I'll give it up. If I even survive to that age. Others nodded, some even glanced at Alicia, who had already reached that age. I can wait until 40, Alicia commented before the glances of the others. After all, as an elf, even being 80 wasn't a problem for her. Well, I can't, Anakiti declared, her tail twitching with determination. If it's a choice between sticking with this familia or starting a family of my own, I'd pick the latter, hands down. A chorus of murmurs rose in agreement. In Loki's mind, all the alarms were going off. None of them were lying. Some of them were genuinely considering leaving the family to pursue romance. Come on, girls, you are young and cute. You have plenty of time. This defeatism has no place in the Loki familia, insisted Loki. It's not defeatism, it's just math, said Elfie seriously. If you want to have children and you target 35 as the top age for playing safe, remove 5 years to have 3 comfortably, you should start to that at 30 at latest. When will we start our relationship? There is no guarantee that our first partner will be the right match. Besides, they said that after you have children, there is little time for romanticism. I want at least some years of love, just my partner and me. We, mortals, have a very short life. Then you should level up. If you reach enough level, your age. Before Loki could finish, one after another, most of the girls began to air their frustrations. I also want a handsome guy to invite me to a romantic dinner. Dancing in the moonlight with a cute partner. A refined elf who understands me. Someone shy who won't intimidate me. Someone cultured, who enjoys reading. We have right to love. We want romance. We deserve romance. Romance, 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 they shouted in unison. What's gotten into you? Has the spirit of Zeus possessed you or something? Mutiny, mutiny. The room's door swung open abruptly, silencing the chorus with surprise. It was Riviera, followed by Finn and Gareth. Put an end to this commotion. Save the family, Mama. Loki continued with exaggerated gestures, moving to embrace the elf. Shut up you two. Riviera repeated, flicking Loki's head. Ouch, we just want, Elfie tried to explain, but Finn quickly interrupted. We've heard it all. Besides, this debate isn't new. It's been recurring in the family's life. Finn glanced at Loki. Indeed, this had been discussed multiple times. Sometimes behind closed doors, among the top executives and Loki. In fact, Loki herself had been the most inflexible. Suggested by Finn, with approval from Gareth and Riviera in a neutral position, a plan to relax the relationships among family members had been proposed. Loki resisted the idea, but as Finn pointed out, it was only a matter of time before the situation would be strongly rejected by the members. Changing the rule was far better than risking losing family members. As Finn predicted, that moment had arrived. Loki sighed and nodded to Finn, giving him the green light to implement the new rules. All right, in light of our members' demand, we will allow relationships with people who do not belong to any familia, under the condition that they will be interviewed by Loki, with the 3 of us as witnesses, to ensure they harbor no ill intentions toward our familia. And from other families, honestly, I'd prefer an adventurer partner, Narvi commented. Unfortunately, that's complicated, Finn replied. But Tiona was an exception. Loki had invited him on a whim, hoping to get entertained with him getting beat up. And it worked, at least the entertainment part, Loki bragged. It's not fair, Elfie protested. If Tiona could, why not us? At that moment, Loki flashed an evil grin. Fine, let's allow Tiona's case. Here's the deal, 1. He must win your affection in single combat. And I won't tolerate fake fights. Huh, but we're not Amazons, Loki continued, ignoring the protest. 2. He must be able to defeat a level 4. Well, maybe that's pushing it. 3. Level 3. And if you can't reach that level, I'll have them fight Bet as a replacement. But Bet is level 5. He'll crush them. That's the point. At least it'll provide good entertainment. And 3. You'll have to tell me everything that happens on your dates, just like Tiona. Wait, are we talking about finding boyfriends or recruiting adventurers for the family? Alicia said skeptically. Why not both? Let's call it Operation Romantic Recruitment. It's as good a way as any to find good candidates for the familia, Loki said. Several people facepalmed. The proposal needs refinement, Finn said. Besides, this isn't the way to change the rules. It's getting way too late. Some of us need to get up early in the morning. We'll prepare everything more carefully and discuss it at the next family meeting. Time to clear out. Let's go, Riveria said in her motherly tone. The girls finally vacated the room. Tion was the last to leave. Before doing so, she stood in front of her sister with a complicated expression on her face. Jealousy, discomfort. While Tiona tried to decipher what was behind her sister's gaze, she was surprised by her hug. I'm happy for you, she commented in her ear during the seconds that the hug lasted. That date of yours is beyond what I could ever imagined. Tiona finally believed she understood. Yes, there was jealousy in her gaze. But also sadness. Perhaps, upon realizing what a real date should be like, she would have realized that her relationship with Finn was a complete illusion. Perhaps Tion had to go through something similar to grief to abandon the idea of her fictitious relationship with the captain. Now that you have a boyfriend, we can organize a double date. Peter, the captain, and the two of us. Never mind. Tion was the same as ever. What do you say, Captain? It's a good idea, isn't it? Captain, where is he? He was here a second ago. A few minutes later, Tiona finally had some privacy. That's when she mentally reviewed everything that had happened. It was clear she couldn't keep any secrets within the family. She sighed, knowing that Peter and she would have to be very careful in the future. But she did her best to forget the interrogation and focus on the date. There were many memorable moments, but swinging around Babel was undoubtedly the best. It was a shame that Orario had so few tall buildings. Tiona had the impression that Peter was quite experienced. Did his home have many tall buildings, or perhaps mountains with the right shape? It must be incredible to do that in a large space. And then it clicked in Tiona's mind. Wait, isn't the dungeon the perfect place for swinging? Not the upper levels. They were too small. But on the middle and lower floors, the ceilings were often quite high. Could Peter swing through the dungeon? And this is the end of part 8 of this amazing crossover, What If? Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.